morning, everyone, and welcome to the Lead Talks. I am Roel Kenneth A. Felices, and I will be your host for today. This show is conducted in celebration of the International Lead Poisoning Prevention Week 2021. This week of action aims to promote the global phase out of lead paints through the establishment of appropriate legally binding measures to stop the manufacture, import, export, distribution, sale, and use of lead paints in every country. International Lead Poisoning Prevention Week is also an opportunity to draw attention to the need for action on lead paint and other sources of lead exposure. Undeniably, lead poisoning is an issue that needs urgent solution. Its widespread use has resulted in extensive environmental contamination, human exposure, and significant public health problems in many parts of the world. Important sources of environmental contamination include mining, smelting, manufacturing and recycling activities, and in some countries, the continued use of leaded paint and leaded aviation fuel. Lead is also used in many other products that are being sold in the market. For example, pigments, paints, toys, solder, stained glass, jewelry, cosmetic products, and some traditional medicines. Many people are particularly vulnerable and can suffer profound and permanent adverse health impacts if being exposed to such products. To better explain the impact of lead in our health and in consumerism, we have with us two of the country's renowned campaigner and advocate against leaded paints and other leaded products. We have with us today Doc Gelo and Sir Thony Dizon. Sir,
Good day, Ken. Thank you for having us. And a great day to our viewers.
Thank you so much. Maganda itong discussion ngayong araw, especially na sineselebrate natin yung International Lead Poisoning Prevention Week.
Thank you so much, Sir Thony and Doc Gelo, for gracing our request to be part of this activity, this live interview with you. This is the best that we can do by far, given our current restrictions. And despite the pandemic, we want to raise awareness in one of the most pressing environmental issues also, which is the lead poisoning and the rampant selling of products with high lead content. Or to better elaborate the problems and issues that we will be discussing today, can you give us a quick background about lead? What is the science behind it, and what kind of chemical and characteristics of this pollutant?
Yung lead ay isang klase ng heavy metal. Natural occurring ito. Makikita to sa halos lahat ng paligid natin. During the early times ay ginagamit na rin talaga itong lead as a for paint. So talagang yun talaga yung pinaka primary purpose niya. Dito sa atin sa Pilipinas, remember merong leaded gasoline at kaya nga isa rin din yan. Kumbaga mamaya pwede kong pakita kung ano yung mga other products na pinagagamitan ng lead. So pero ang pinaka primary niya is on paints. And for a period of time ay talagang dahil na rin din sa mga studies, mga pag-aaral, and even campaigns, ay lumakas yung advocacy for a global elimination of the use of this heavy metal because na rin, dahil na rin siguro mamaya si Doc Gelo pwede niyang i-explain yung exposure, yung health effect nitong lead. Especially sa mga children, sa mga bata. So, kaya ganoon na rin din yung campaign globally to eliminate talaga yung paggamit ito. At siguro mamaya may mga success stories tayo na pwedeng i-share sa ating mga viewers kung ano na yung inabot ng ating campaign.
All right. And then to add to what Sir Thony mentioned, lead can actually be found everywhere in the environment. It can be present in the air, the water, and the soil. And it's even inside our own homes. And it's very important to know where exactly is lead present, because that is how we will know how humans can be exposed to lead and how lead can enter into the human body. And in terms of exposure, what we do know is that lead can be obtained, or people can be exposed to lead through occupational and environmental sources. And in terms of entering the body, lead can be inhaled, especially this yung inhalation of lead is especially common in certain industries or occupations where people do smelting or recycling or yung mga nag-strip ng paint na contaminated with lead. And you can also ingest lead, no? Either through water or through food. And yun nga, gaya ng nabanggit ni Ken kanina, no, even more lately, and I think something that hasn't been really explored so far is the presence of lead in cosmetics. No, there are some cosmetics like makeup, mascara that have been found, and even some traditional medicines that are not regulated but still find their way into the Philippine market. Some of these have been found to be traced with some levels of lead.
Yes, I agree that there are a lot of sources no, that we can be exposed sa lead. Now, sir, this particular question is on the level of exposure when it comes to lead. No, can you briefly discuss no, what are the harmful effects of this lead exposure and what are the possible short-term and long-term effects to exposure to high level of lead?
Okay, so I guess I'll answer that question, no, Ken, no? People can be poisoned from lead in two ways, no? There's what we call acute lead poisoning, where a person is exposed, either inhales or ingests a significant amount of lead, no, over a short period of time, and that can lead to acute poisoning. But what's actually more common, especially what we've seen in a lot of studies, is what we call chronic poisoning, where people have been exposed to small amounts of lead, either through inhalation or ingestion, but over a long period of time. Okay, so may acute lead poisoning and then may chronic poisoning, no? And it's very important to know how this, not all ingestion or inhalation of lead can immediately lead to poisoning, no? The amount of lead that you inhale or ingest, the route of exposure, gaya nga ng nasabi mo kanina, and the length of exposure, and even the type of lead. Okay, kasi there are different types of lead compounds, no? Those are the different things that must be considered to know how toxic or harmful will the symptoms be when one person is exposed to lead compounds. Okay, let's talk about acute poisoning. When people are exposed to significant amounts of lead, no, as in yung napakarami, nakainom ka ng napakaraming lead sa tubig, or nakapag-inhale ka ng napakaraming lead, no, from pollution, some of the symptoms may include, the most common would be abdominal pain, or nausea and vomiting, nasusuka, headache, muscle weakness, and then minsan may nakikita sa gums yung mga tinatawag na lead lines on the gums, and some patients report na may nalalasahan silang parang metallic, okay? Yung iba hindi makatulog, nahihilo, and in very, very severe cases, no, like some people, especially children, na parami talaga ang na-ingest or na-inhale na lead, it can even lead to coma or even worse, death. When we talk about chronic exposure, di ba, na pag-usapan na natin yung acute exposure or acute poisoning, when we talk about chronic exposure, yung tipong you're exposed to small amounts of lead, but through a long period of time, eventually people will start developing symptoms such as irritability, no? Parang lagi silang wala sa mood. Yung iba nalalabo yung mata or may mga nakikitang kakaiba. Some may even develop hypertension or yung iba nagbabago yung kulay ng kanilang balat. But especially for children, no? The most common symptom for chronic lead poisoning in children is poor cognitive and academic development. Ibig sabihin nun, it's usually seen in terms of the child's performance sa school na napapansin hindi nakakapagbasa or hindi nakakapag-keep up with the child's classmates, no? Usually, these symptoms of poor cognitive performance ang nakikita naman na most significant or most common symptom of chronic lead poisoning, especially in children. Sige, I think you also have additional questions, no? Importante ba, how about yung differences in terms of route of exposure or mechanism of exposure? Nabanggit nga natin kanina that lead can be inhaled or it can be ingested. It can also you can also be exposed to lead through skin contact or dermal contact na tinatawag natin. And in some cases, when a pregnant mother is exposed to lead, no, some of the lead can transfer to the unborn baby or to the fetus transplacentally. Okay, the most significant, the most common type of exposure or mechanism of exposure to lead is really through ingestion. No, epidemiologically, based on studies, most people or most of the lead that goes into people's body is ingested lead. Okay, either directly or indirectly, or even through drinking. Now, when you ingest lead, depending on the type of lead, and depending on the body of the person, around 20 to 70% of the lead is eventually absorbed in your bloodstream. Okay? Importante yung malaman yung absorption into the bloodstream, because that's how we know how much of the symptoms the lead will cause. No? So when you ingest lead, around 20 to 70% of it eventually is absorbed into your bloodstream to cause significant health effects. Especially for children, no? For children, they have smaller bodies, they have a wider area of distribution. Mas marami yung na-absorb na lead ng mga bata kaysa sa mga matatanda. Inhalation is a less common route of exposure, but when you inhale lead, all of it, almost all of it, goes into the body.
Given those facts those facts are very important, no, na malaman ng ating mga audiences, given na marami pa rin mga products with high lead content that are still being available in the market today. So that's a problem that we should all be wary about. And just to contextualize the issue, do we have recorded lead poisoning cases here in the Philippines? And can you share some of these cases and maybe identify kung saan na location, if we can, sa location nangyari yung mga lead poisoning na incident na ito?
Yes, so we do have recorded cases of lead poisoning in the Philippines, both acute lead poisoning and chronic lead poisoning. No? And majority of those who are affected both by acute and chronic poisoning are really children, because children are 10 times more likely to be exposed to lead, either lead found in dust or lead found in toys, because children have this habit of, especially yung mga toddlers, yung mga malilit na bata, they like picking up stuff from the ground, and they like putting their toys in their mouth. And if, say for example, a toy has been painted with a lead based paint, that's how lead can get introduced into the toddler's body. We do not have any formal study yet, like a population-based survey on, or at least recent population-based survey on detecting the amount of lead, especially in children. But the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation, which is a global movement or organization that does epidemiological studies, estimates that about half, 50% of the 40 million children in the Philippines have blood levels above 5 microgram per deciliter. Okay? Which is the standard for intervention set by the CDC, by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. There have been some small-scale studies in the Philippines which shows that blood levels in children showed a range of 5.39 to 67.6 microgram per deciliters. Pero yun nga, parang as far as I know, there's no completed nationwide study yet looking at the amount of blood lead levels among Filipino children. I know there is something in the works, and I hope that study eventually progresses through. It's a nationwide study looking at blood levels in children. Pero yun, parang just the estimate from the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation of when they said that around half or 50% of Filipino children have blood levels above 5 microgram per deciliter, that is something unsettling and something that should be taken seriously by our public health authorities.
Indeed, that number is alarming. That it should be one of the benchmark data of our national government to somehow elevate their implementation or their policy on banning the lead paint here in our country. Now, you have said earlier, sir, that no, parang we can identify that children is the most vulnerable sector then when it comes to lead poisoning. Now, there are a lot of, I mean, products still available in the market today na yun, toys, that can expose children to lead poisoning also. Knowing that children would be 10 times more likely to be exposed to lead, what are the common types of toys or school materials that are proven with high lead amounts of lead? And where do you think children are more likely to be frequently exposed? Is it at their homes, schools, parks, playgrounds, and etc.? Maybe Sir Tony can answer this question.
Yes, thank you. Matagal-tagal na rin yung efforts ng Ecowaste para mag-product testing campaign to eliminate the use of lead, no? Especially in consumer products. Tama yung binanggit ni Doc Gelo, napakahalaga nung na maintindihan ng ating mga consumers yung health effects ng exposure dito sa ganitong klaseng heavy metal. At tama nga, hindi rin masyado talagang naido-document, especially yung kung meron bang cases na nangyari dito sa atin sa Pilipinas. Kasi nga, hindi pa directly may correlate siya sa lead exposure. Dahil sabi nga ni Doc Gelo, parang sleeping dragon ang ganitong klase ng chemicals. Unti-unti siya, no, cumulative na iipon siya sa katawan, at once na mag-trigger na talaga yung high level concentration, doon na magte-take effect ito. At maraming mga similar symptoms. Am I right, Doc Gelo, na hindi lang talaga na hindi ka mukagad ma-direct to lead exposure unless otherwise ma-analyze mo na yung situation o yung environment ng bata, saan ba siya naglalaro, saan ba siya madalas, bakit nagkaroon siya ng ganitong klaseng exposure. Unless may mga ilang cases, like for example in the US, nagkaroon ng isang case na kung saan ay talagang nagkasakit yung bata na ingest niya yung isang particular na item at talagang yun yung nag-cause kung bakit na hospitalize siya at nalaman na talagang napakataas ng concentration niya sa lead at na-sue yung company, especially yung merong pagmamay-ari ng product na yon para sagutin yung liabilities doon sa case na yon. Kaya dito sa atin, kaya nga global yung campaign to eliminate yung paggamit nito, especially sa mga other consumer products katulad nga ng binabanggit ninyo, toys. Saan nga ba makikita yung ganito or saan ba ginagamit yung ganitong klaseng chemical sa mga products na ito? One, dahil nga paint yung pinaka number one source. So ang isang basis natin ay yung mga paints na ginagamit dito sa mga laruan. Paano ma-determine? One, hindi talaga ganong kadali unless otherwise makikita mo siya sa product label, i-disclose ng mga companies kung ano yung klase ng mga chemicals na ginagamit nila. Kung maayos yung regulation natin dito, mape-prevent talaga yung exposure. Pero so far, sa tagal ng ating campaign, kasama natin yan si Doc Gelo at ang EDs. We've been monitoring toys for many years at talagang may mga persistent pa rin ng mga manufacturers na hindi nagko-comply doon sa regulations na meron tayo. Kaya patuloy pa rin natin itong ginagawa. So aside from toys, binanggit na rin kanina ni Doc Gelo, makikita rin natin siya sa cosmetics. So yung mga kababaihan natin dyan or kung sino man yung mga gumagamit ng cosmetics, even mga kalalakihan, gumagamit din ng cosmetics. Pero particularly, nakita natin yung presence ng lead dito sa mga lipsticks. Yan, especially yung mga pwede natin sabihin unregistered, unbranded, or fake. Pwede na rin naman natin sabihin din siya na fake, contraband type na mga na lipstick Yan, diyan natin nakita yung presence of lead. Talagang talagang wide use yung ganitong klase ng metal dahil nga sa una may anti-corrosive properties siya, tapos nagko-contribute siya dun sa pagiging bright nung kulay. So talagang ginagamit siya sa paints, ginagamit siya in other products dahil nga para sabi nga pag ang anak mo sinama mo sa isang uh, toy store, talagang ma-appreciate niya kagad yung bright color. So yun talaga yung purpose nitong ganitong klase ng chemical. So other than cosmetics ay meron pang iba pa, like nakita rin natin to sa water containers. Naalala ko binabanggit ito Gelo kanina, no, yung air, water. So imagine mo na lang yung water containers containing lead coatings, hinahawakan niya, no, yung hand to mouth activity na binabanggit kanina. So yan yung napakataas ng level ng exposure na mangyayari dahil nasa presence nitong ganitong chemicals sa mga very common na mga consumer products na ginagamit natin lahat, even mga Davaoenos.
Sir Tony, idagdag din natin yung mga school supplies, no? Especially
yes,
yung mga watercolor, crayons, no? Kasi
tama,
yung lead, ginagamit din na pampatingkad, especially for coloring materials.
Correct. Yan. Iba't ibang klase ng school supply. Siguro, at naalala ko kanina binabanggit yung hand to mouth. Imagine mo na lang yung mga bata, minsan pag first day ng school nila, medyo konting natatakot or nahihiya. So naghahanap yan ng something to bite. Talagang may ganong behavior yung mga bata. So talagang ang tendency niya either kakagatin niya yung bag niya or anything na nahawak niya. At dahil nga sa medyo yung behavior ng pagkatapos nilang hawakan yung mga bagay nito, tapos tatawagin ng mga magulang para kumain, hindi na naguhugas ang kamay, diretso kain. So yun na, route of exposure talaga siya. At every time na ginagawa yun for how many years or for a period of time, doon nag-accumulate yung presence ng lead exposure. At nag-stay siya sa katawan, nanatili talaga yan, unless otherwise medyo conscious ka, magpapa-blood lead test ka, medyo mahal, Doc Gelo, tama, no? Medyo mahal talaga. So, kung akala mo lang ay normal symptoms lang siya, so bibigyan mo lang yan ng minsan magsa-self-medicate lang. Bibigyan mo lang yan ng mga ordinary mga klase ng gamot. Unless otherwise, lumabas na talaga yung symptoms ng high concentration exposure. Yun, doon ka lang ma-alarm. At ang pinaka-worst scenario na mangyayari dahil neurotoxin ito ay irreversible ang effect. So hindi mo yan mababalik. Kahit anong klase siguro na therapy or chelation therapy gawin mo, hindi talaga siya pwede. Irreversible talaga ito. So kaya ganun na rin talaga yung campaign to really eliminate yung paggamit nitong ganitong klaseng chemical or metal sa mga common consumer products. Idagdag ko lang kasi minsan may ganun tayong culture na pag walang nangyayaring incident dito sa atin, hindi na natin masyadong binibigyan ng pansin, which is wrong. Hindi porke walang na-record na cases dito sa atin sa Pilipinas, babaliwalain na lang natin itong health impacts nitong lead nitong ganitong klaseng chemical dahil nga sa scientific may scientific basis na yung mga pag-aaral at may global campaign na talaga rito. Sabi nga hindi na natin kailangan pang may mangyari pa na exposure dito sa atin or incident or accident dito sa atin para lang tayo maniwala na talagang masama sa kalusugan, lalong-lalo na ng mga bata, ang ganitong klaseng chemical.
Yes, indeed, I agree with that, Sir Tony. No, as you have mentioned, mentioned ni Doc Gelo kanina na yung lead is nag-accumulate sa body ng tao. So yung symptoms or yung effect niya will happen for how many months or years. No, so it's really alarming if we still have this products with high lead content available in our market today. I came across this one reading or one book that I read online that rice, of course, rice and fish are staple food for Filipinos. And According to studies, several areas here in our country showed heavy lead contamination in air, water, plants, and soil, which may pollute agricultural and aquatic products commonly taken by Filipino people. What do you think about this?
Yeah, no, I think I'm quite familiar with this study. This is the study by Dr. Solidum, correct? No, from the Department of Science and Technology, wherein they were able to detect lead accumulating in certain staple foods such as rice and fish. And usually the mechanism here is, lead can be present in water. And when, the plants, when the rice or the palay absorbs the water, that's how it also gets eventually deposited or bioaccumulated into the rice grains that we eventually eat as bigas or kanin. Same goes for fish, no? These metals, especially yung mga wastes na tinatapon sa ating mga yamang tubig to our marine or water bodies, no? These fishes or these marine animals can also ingest these lead wastes that are disposed in our water bodies, and eventually, when we eat this marine resources, these fishes as food, no, that's how it eventually gets passed on to us, no.
Thank you so much for that, Doc Jello. It's good that you elaborated on this study kasi this somehow actually involves a lot of us, no? Kasi we all eat rice and fish. So somehow we should always be alarmed and be, of course, careful, no, on a lot of these things because we don't know. We might be consuming, no, lead kasi nga, yun nga, di natin siya nakikita and the symptoms, no, it accumulates throughout the years. There are several paints with high lead content that are still being sold in the market today. Last June, we conducted our small investigation or survey here in Davao City, and we found out that there are actually several paint brands that are with high lead content that are being sold in some of the big stores here in Davao City. Now, sir, can you share with us, some of the brands or some of these products na with high lead content? For us to inform also our viewers, to avoid this kind of products when they are buying something in the market.
Yes, katulad nung sinimulan na natin kanina, yung mga priority kasi ng Ecowaste Coalition is sabi nga children's health first. So meaning mga children's products that includes toys, school supplies, water containers, other children's products na ginagamitan ng pintura, ng paints or paint coatings, kasama yan dun sa ating mga binabantayan. Both offline markets and then online markets. Dahil nga ngayon, during the time of pandemic, nag-boom talaga yung online shopping. Pati yan ay pinupush din natin. May mga ilang naging significant actions na ang government sa atin, especially sa ating advocacy work on lead, like ilang mga ang pangunahing mga agencies na nagre-regulate, nagmo-monitor, and even do enforcement actions ay ang Department of Health, ang Food and Drug Administration, at ang ating DNR. Yan yung mga primary agencies. With regards to consumer products, of course, DOH and FDA yan. May mga ilang advisories na sila na inilabas with regards dun sa mga products like yun sa toys, school supplies, even spray paints. Dahil dalawa kasi ang kino-cover ng ating regulation dito sa ating bansa under the Chemical Control Order for Lead and Lead Compounds, both enamel paints, ito yung mga pinturang ginagamit sa bahay, tsaka yung industrial paints. So marami yan, marami. Kotse, automotive, ayan yung mga ilang mga industrial paints. Yan ay covered na, yan ay regulated na, and hopefully ay phase out na. Meaning hindi na dapat sila gumagamit, at kung meron man ay pasok siya doon sa safe level standard na which is 90 parts per million. So aside from spray paints ay marami pa rin iba pang mga products tayo na binabantayan, even cosmetics, yung binabanggit nga ni Doc Gelo kanina. especially lipsticks. Dito sa atin, dahil nga sa time ng pandemic, medyo hirap na sa buhay yung ating mga kababayan. So the best way lang para medyo maka-avail pa rin sila ng kanilang mga common products na binibili ay maghahanap talaga sila ng mura. So tendency talagang kung medyo affordable yung isang produkto, bibili na niya kahit na hindi ito ni-review muna, hindi mo na sinearch kung ito ba ay regulated and or notified yung mga products na to. Yun, no, medyo limited pa rin yung awareness ng ating mga consumers dito. So may mga tendency na nangyari kasi na naging very impulsive ang mga consumers. So dahil nga syempre wala kang gagawin sa loob ng bahay. So ang pinaka naging parang pwede sabihin siguro natin libangan ay mag-check ng mga online shopping. Tingnan kung alin yung available at mura at bilhin. So yun, ganun yung naging behavior ng hindi naman siguro lahat but yung mga ilang mga kababayan natin. Siguro baka sa Davao ganun din yung situation, no? Dahil nga sa lockdown, ngayon I think medyo maluwag na sa Davao kaya may mga ilang establishments na na-open na. So maraming consumer products at ayaw nga sana natin na madagdagan pa. Wag sanang i-divert yung mga existing raw materials, lead raw materials ng mga it's either any factory or companies, i-divert ito into other consumer products. Hopefully i-eliminate na talaga, wag gamitin at syempre proper disposal, pinakamahalaga, di ba, Doc Gelo? Kasi ang worry natin baka kasi pag walang proper disposal, itapon lang nila yan sa sewerage, sa water bodies, edi ganun din magiging resulta ng yung taas ng level of exposure natin, lalong-lalo alam niyo naman yung Pilipinas ay mas malawak yung ating water bodies, mako-contaminate pa rin tayo. So talagang sabi nga yung rule ng precautionary principle is very important. We really have to be careful dun sa mga products na binibili natin, especially kung ito ay paint coated products. Make sure na properly labeled ito, and if kung kakayanin naman natin total medyo sabi nga tumaas yung level ng social media awareness ng mga tao, halos lahat naka smartphones na, so baka pwedeng i-review muna, i-check muna nila kung notified, banned yung products before they purchase it. Pinaka-importante talaga yon. At make sure na lead safe or lead free yung mga products na kanilang bibili.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Sir Tony. May I ask po if there are some sort of labeling doon sa mga products natin na lead safe, or are we advocating for this also?
Yes, buti nabanggit mo, very fortunate tayo. Nanguna ang sabi nga globally ang Pilipinas ngayon ang pinakasabi natin nangunguna in terms of lead paint elimination. Bakit? Dahil may mga ilang paint companies na tayo na nagpa-certify na lead safe na yung kanilang mga product. Meaning nag-shift na sila from the sa paggamit ng lead, high concentration of lead, to a lead safe level which is pasok na siya doon sa standard na 90 parts per million. At 3 big paint companies, hindi ko na siguro babanggitin yung kanilang mga pangalan, pero makikita na natin ito sa kanilang mga can labels. So pinaka-importante yon, hanapin nila kaagad yung label ng lead safe paint doon sa mga pintura. Now with regards to other products, yun ang medyo kailangan pa natin talagang i-push. Especially yung mga other manufacturers na talagang una, magpa-certify na sila na lead safe ang ginagamit nila. Second ay talagang ipa-register nila, ipa-notify nila yung kanilang product para yung ating mga regulatory agencies ay matitest yung kanilang mga products before it goes out to the market, bago umabot yan sa atin bilang mga consumer. At sabi nga mahalaga yung kumbaga mahalaga yung kalusugan, yung inuuna natin at hindi yung negosyo, hindi yung kita. Thank you.
Yes, a follow-up question and then Sir Tony. When it comes to measuring the lead content ng mga products, paano po ba ginagawa ito at sino po yung governing body or implementing body na nagsasagawa ng monitoring or ng inspection ng lead content ng mga products?
Yes, binanggit ko na nga kanina, yung DOH primarily with regards to consumer products is the Food and Drug Administration, especially children's products, toys, school supplies, other children's products, sila yung nagre-regulate. With regards to industrial paint, ay ang ating DNR ang nagre-regulate nito. So both agencies has their own enforcement authority. They have their own networks, agencies, departments, not just in Manila but also in other parts of the country para ma-push ito. But of course, syempre, sabi nga kahit dito sa ating bansa, kahit na meron tayong law, kahit meron tayong mga regulations, ay hindi sapat para ma-prevent talaga natin yung pagpasok ng ganitong mga unregulated products. So, kaya pumapasok dito yung support ng ating mga local government in coming up with ordinances para i-secure, especially nakakatuwa dahil dito sa atin sa campaign on lead elimination, at least meron tayong dalawa na city na nanguna para magkaroon ng ordinance, lead safe ordinance. One is in Quezon City and the other one is in, of course, Davao City. So nagpapasalamat tayo dun sa mga local government natin in coming up with these ordinances para ma-secure, ma-ensure talaga na hindi na papasok pa yung ganitong mga products, leaded products sa kanilang mga lugar.
Yung na-mention niyo po kanina, yung meron na online tsaka offline, and I think it is hard to monitor yung mga online stores compared to the offline stores. And majority of the people now are ordering online instead of offline. So some of them are purchasing paint brands under unknown names. When all cans are sold, they order more of the same paint but under different name, making it hard to monitor. Now, what do you think, or ano po yung mga rason kung bakit majority pa rin sa mga consumers opt to buy unverified paints?
Pwedeng dagdagan siguro to ni Doc Gelo, but in our long experience of product monitoring, talagang price talaga yung nagiging parang prevailing factor para mag-purchase yung ating consumer o yung ating mga kababayan ng mga produkto or tangkilikin yung ganitong mga produkto. It doesn't matter kung anong brand yan. Although yung iba medyo conscious in terms of brand, pero price talaga yung nagiging number one factor. Kaya binibili nila yung mga produkto na to. Tama yun, no? Medyo limited talaga tayo in terms of monitoring online shopping sites. That's the reason why talagang nakikipag-ugnayan tayo. We coordinated with the Department of Trade and Industry. Sila kasi yung isang I'm not sure kung kung meron na ba tayo or effective ba ang e-commerce law dito sa atin, dahil yan yung dapat na batas na nag-guide sa atin. Alam ko may mga ilang hearings ako na napapanood na kung saan parang medyo meron pero kailangan pang i-strengthen ang e-commerce law dito sa ating bansa. Especially hindi lang ito dun sa hindi lang ito chemical exposure related, but rather yung other factors pa na nagkakaproblema tayo with regards to online shopping. Unregulated ito, hindi ko alam kung bakit hinahayaan ng mga shopping platform yung pagbebenta na hindi nila bine-verify yung mga products ng mga sellers. As long as they just posted their ads, and nakakalungkot. Kaya yan yung isa sa tinutukan natin noong time ng pandemic. Halos talaga online shopping sites yung ating naging source of product purchase. Kaya sila rin yung naging dahilan kung bakit pinupursige natin ito. But may mga ilang success stories tayo pero hindi pa talaga sa lahat ng products. Sobrang dami ng products online para i-monitor mo lahat. Hindi lang yan, pati yung other chemicals pa, di ba, Doc Gelo, yung ating mercury in skin creams, talagang sobrang dami pa. Siguro that will be another topic ng EDIS for this talk. Sobrang dami. So talagang malulula ka sa dami ng products. At talagang it's about time. It's high time para ma-regulate na talaga yung product shopping online dito sa ating bansa. Doc Gelo?
Yeah, I guess what I can add is regulation of products kasi is a type of a supply side intervention. But the thing kasi is, I think no, in this case, kailangan din sabayan ng mga interventions at the level of demand. No, kasi like say for example, no, you remove a particular lead-based paint in Facebook Marketplace or in Lazada. There's no stopping this specific seller from just selling it at another platform for as long as there is demand. So hanggat may naghahanap na tao, hanggat may gustong bumili, these people will always find a way to sell these things, no? To sell these products that may be contaminated with lead. So I think so those supply side interventions and regulations are important, okay? But we need to complement them with demand side interventions. And really, the strongest demand side intervention that we can do right now is really education. We need to educate people, and people must be given targeted information. Yung tipong, it's not just generic information, but really tell them which specific products, which specific toys, which specific brands should they avoid. Kasi madali lang naman din kausap yung mga tao eh. Alam mo yun, sa palengke naman, di ba, parang hindi naman natin lagi-laging binibili kung ano lagi yung pinakamura, di ba? Alam yan ng mga nanay natin. Tinitingnan din natin yung quality, tinitingnan din natin. Bibili ka ba ng isda? Bibili ka ba ng murang isda? Kung alam mo naman na yung isda na bibilihan mo ay ay bulok na or luma na, di ba? Wala namang bibili kapag gano'n. Same goes for lead, no? Bibilin mo ba itong luma na laruan na ito or itong mura na pintura na ito, knowing that it may have direct or even indirect harms to you or risks to you. So I think targeted information, very strong and aggressive information campaigns must be introduced or made accessible at the level of the demand.
I agree with that, Sir Doc Gelo. No, now we should heighten our awareness campaign, especially to our consumers, mga fellow consumers natin. Now we are feeding them with information regarding the products with high lead content. While we deal with the supply, also with the intervention with the supply, we should also deal with our consumers. So that's a good idea. And for us, advocacy groups, we have our platforms, we have social media to intensify our campaign regarding these products. And of course, we are always supportive with the campaign of Ecowaste Coalition. We are actually very happy with the data that they are giving us regarding these products with high lead content. So, Sir Thony, can you share with us or reiterate with us the progress that has been made in the country when it comes to the banning of lead paints here in our country?
Yes, thank you. So far ay naging successful yung ating campaign. One, of course, yung pag-reach out natin sa mga paint manufacturers. As I mentioned, may mga paint manufacturers na nagpa-certify na lead-safe paint. So makakita na tayo talaga sa market ng mga lead-safe paints. And hopefully, yung other paint companies will follow para magpa-certify na rin sila. I think kailangan talaga lang na merong manguna para sumunod yung iba. Ang ultimate goal naman is ma-ensure natin na safe itong mga products na to. With regards to other products, of course, patuloy yung ating coordination with the Food and Drug Administration, with the Department of Health, and of course with DENR. Particularly para mas may strengthen pa itong pag-monitor, i-enforce at pag-confiscate ng mga products dito sa ating bansa, lalong-lalo na yung mga unregulated, unnotified na mga products. At syempre, patuloy pa rin naman yung ating advocacy work. Yung consumer awareness ay nagtutuloy-tuloy. Papasalamat tayo sa EDIS. We have this kind of webinar, discussion, live, via Facebook or by any social media site para mas ma-encourage natin yung ating mga kababayan, mga Davaoeños, na mabigyan sila ng information about the effects of lead at ano-ano yung mga products na dapat na iwasan natin para hindi tayo ma-expose. Sabi nga, precautionary principle, prevention is better than cure. Mas maging vigilant tayo. Hindi lang po ito laban natin. Ito ay laban globally ng buong mundo. Hindi lang tayo yung Pilipinas, hindi lang Pilipinas yung nagpupush para ma-eliminate na yung paggamit ng lead, kundi marami ng mga bansa ang may ganitong klaseng advocacy, may ganitong klaseng campaign at totally magkaroon ng result itong ating ginagawa, yung ating awareness campaign, lalo-lalo na kung makikita na natin na wala ng mga leaded products na makikita tayo both offline and online, and at the same time ay halos malaking percentage na ng mga paint manufacturers ang lead safe paint na yung kanilang minamanufacture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sir Thony. This question, final question natin kay Doc Gelo. As a medical doctor and eligible and have witnessed firsthand the harmful effects of lead, what is your message to our viewers or listeners today?
My main message really, and something that we have already been emphasizing since the beginning, is for our listeners, our patients, for all Filipinos to be more aware as to how you can be exposed to lead poisoning. No, it really begins with that. No, knowing whether the food that you eat, the toys that you buy, the school supplies that you provide to your children, if they may be contaminated with lead. And I guess to that end, the governments, different government agencies at the national and even at the regional or local level can further support our communities so that they can be made more aware as to how they can be exposed to the harmful effects of lead. I know that as a medical doctor, I can only really speak with regards to the direct individual benefits of lead, but sometimes I think and knowing that lead can lead to poor cognitive performance or to poor educational performance. Imagine, for the longest time, the Philippines hasn't been performing quite well, at least compared to its regional peers, not to all other Southeast Asian countries. The Philippines or Filipino children haven't been performing quite well or relatively as well as our regional peers in terms of academics, in terms of reading, in terms of math. And sometimes I wonder, could lead have had a possible role there, why we have poor educational or poor cognitive performance, especially among our children. In the Philippines, we have rising cases of mental health problems, and lead has also been linked with this mental health problem. So, gaya din nga ng sinabi ni Sir Thony kanina, it's actually a very, very big problem, and yet very few people fully understand how it is affecting us individually, but it's also affecting us as a society, as how it's affecting communities, how it's affecting families. So really, awareness is number one, but to further support and enable our everyday Filipinos, we need multi-sectoral action, not just the health sector, not just the environment sector, even the business sector, the trade sector, the labor sector. we all have to join hand in hand when it comes to completely eliminating and minimizing the harmful effects of lead poisoning. Thank you.
And for Sir Tony, as an advocate of having a lead safe environment, what is your message to our consumers and to the businesses and to, of course, our fellow citizens?
Yes, eksakto yung binanggit ni Doc Gelo. Ang tema po ng ating International Poisoning Prevention Week is working together for a world without lead paint. So very eksakto yung binanggit ni Doc Gelo na kailangan talaga natin magsama-sama, magkaisa. We need all the efforts from other cross sectors para ma-eliminate na nga totally yung paggamit ng lead paint, paggamit ng lead in consumer products, at yan yung ating goal, yung gustong ma-achieve, especially by next week ay ito yung pag-coincide natin sa celebration 9th International Lead Poisoning Prevention Week. May events po tayo, may activities po tayo, may webinar tayo, tama no? Sana mag-participate, maka-attend yung ating mga kababayan para mas intindihan nila, mas ma-appreciate yung ating efforts para ma-push na natin talaga globally ang pag-eliminate ng lead in consumer products. And of course, syempre, papasalamat tayo dun sa mga aligned agencies, sectors, even NGOs na talagang patuloy yung ganitong initiative to raise awareness. Sana ay merong tayong nabigyan ng information ng mga kababayan natin at kailangan talaga mas maging vigilant tayo as consumers doon sa mga products na binibili natin. Make sure na ang mabibili natin na products ay hindi yung containing lead. Try to do some research first before buying. I-check kung legit yung mga products na yan, contaminated yan ng ganitong klaseng chemical. Sabi nga, ipursige natin pag-prevent ng exposure to lead and start it in our home. Pinaka-importante yan. Let's start it in ourselves, especially doon sa mga products na binibili natin. And this is a good time para magsama-sama para mapigilan na natin talaga ito. Maraming salamat.
Thank you so much, Sir Tony and Doc Gelo, for gracing our request to be the speakers of our Lead Talk today. And thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to our viewers. And of course, we would like to express our heartfelt gratitude also to our viewers who stay tuned with us for the entire discussion for today's episode of Lead Talk. And that's the time that we got today. And God bless you all.